Okay, today we're going to be talking about the biblical story of the conquest of Jericho. It's a pretty famous story from the Bible, and it's the story of when Joshua and the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, and they approached the Canaanite city of Jericho, which was a very strong fortified city, which was famous for its large wall. And the Israelites were called to conquer the city, and they did so in a pretty interesting way by marching around the city and blowing the trumpets, and the walls fell. And then they burned the city without even plundering it. And only one family survived, which was the family of Rahab. It's depicted in the Bible in Joshua chapter 6. And today, we're going to be talking about if we actually have evidence of this happening. You know, throughout most of history, the story was widely accepted as being accurate. But, you know, as time went on in the Enlightenment, the story became questioned. And in the 19th century, a lot of archaeological digs and studies were done. And we're going to be talking about some of those today. So the initial discovery was discovered by Sir Charles Warren, who was excavating Holy Land sites, including the area of Tel es Sultan, which is the site of Jericho. And he found various mounds, which he knew were man-made, and he at first thought that they were castles and didn't think much of them. But the site was excavated in the early 1900s by Karl Watzinger, and he discovered ancient ruins of a massive city, and it really greatly fit the description of the city of Jericho. He found a largely outward fallen flat wall, which is interesting because typically when a city is conquered, the wall would fall inward, but this wall was fallen outward. And he found the city being burned with fire, as you would have expected, and it really excited him because of how well it fit the biblical narrative. And in the 1930s, another man named John Garstang, who was a pioneer in the field of archaeology, he excavated the area in the 30s. And he found similar things to what Watzinger found, but he also found a large number of clay pots filled with grain, which was not typical. Usually during a time of war, a conquered city, it would have been plundered. But of course, the Israelites were told not to plunder the city of Jericho. And he found large stashes of grain, which further led him to believe, based on the biblical accounts, that the conquest happened after the time of harvest, that it fit the biblical description very, very well. And he also found gravestones which contained scarabs, which depicted the name of Egyptian pharaohs of the time of the 14th century BC. And this led him to believe that not only was this the city of Jericho conquered as the Bible described, but also it happened at the time of 1400 BC, which fit the biblical narrative, which told us that it happened 440 years before the establishment of the first temple, which was in 966. The dates lined up really, really well. But Kathleen Kenyon came around in the 1950s, another famous archaeologist, and she excavated the area. And unlike people like Garstang, she was coming at this not from an angle of trying to prove the Bible, but more just to get more information and explain it. And she did a very detailed approach. She didn't cover as wide of a geographic area, but the area that she covered, she did so in great detail. She did it through stratigraphy. She went layer by layer. And she found many similar findings as Garstang, such as the wall and large grain containers, but she was surprised at the lack of Cypriot biochrome pottery. During the 14th century BC, this was extremely popular in the Middle East, but she found a lot of monochrome pottery, which was very popular in the 15th, 16th century BC. And this led her to believe that the conquest of Jericho had actually happened much earlier, at around 1550 BC, which would have been well before the Israelites ever came to the Holy Land. And this conflicted with the biblical narrative greatly. And this really kind of shook up the scene. Many scholars decided that the biblical narrative was not historically accurate because of these findings. But this has not stopped a lot of people from taking the biblical narrative as historically accurate because of all the evidence of the scarabs and just the way that the city was conquered. And Dr. Bryant Wood believes that Garstang's findings were more accurate because he excavated a much larger area, and he believed that Garstang did find biochrome pottery in the area, just not in the area that Kenyon searched. And Wood used carbon-14 analysis, which was radiometric dating, and he placed a date at around 1410 BC. And he sent his findings to the British Museum, and it confirmed his findings, but even this was criticized for its legitimacy. So what do we make of all of this? The topic is still very widely disputed and controversial. The scholarly consensus is that the city of Jericho was in fact conquered and burned as the Bible described, but that it happened at a much earlier time, which goes against the biblical narrative, and was well before the time of the Egyptians. But there's still a lot of people who hold firmly to the biblical claim, just because of all the other evidence that has been found, which so supports it. So what can we make from all this? It's really a matter of faith, and it's a matter of logic. And yeah, these are my sources, and these are my image sourcing. Thank you very much.